Sustainable urban mobility planning is a strategic and integrated approach to dealing effectively with the complexities of urban transport. Its core goal is to improve accessibility and quality of life by achieving a shift towards more sustainable mobility. The definition and guidelines for structuring a SUMP are widely known and disseminated at the European and national cascade levels. The plan complements existing planning instruments and follows the principles of integration, participation, monitoring, and evaluation principles. Among the complexities in defining a SUMP, plans must consider European guidelines, national regulations, and cascading regional planning. Integration is the key concept to foster the framing of the UAM in SUMP, informing policies and urban planning configurations proposed by the ASSURED-UAM project to combine UAM with ground transport services. General principles of urban development aim at including UAM in the urban mobility context under the service perspective, meant as a capacity to solve a need with acceptable use of resources. All types of transport modes should be considered in a network as a system for people and goods that improves people's quality of life based on equity. Transport system must be sustainable and balanced in economic, environmental, and social perspectives, considering the economic viability, social equality, and inclusion of individual needs. Do no significant harm. The deployment of UAM contributes to the do no significant harm to the environment, contributing to new and more sustainable decarbonized transport pathways, committed to attracting local authorities, civil society, and all interested parties that understand the environmental aspects, and life quality improvement for citizens of urban and peri-urban areas. UAM must be integrated into the whole mobility system in a synergic and synchronized manner, with the scope to improve the services provided to the communities. The key actors and stakeholders involved in urban mobility are shown in the tables. For urban transport and urban planning, the main actors and their responsibilities and influences are transport and infrastructure operators with their business model and fares and performance assessments, smart city services relying on UAM, responsible for service-specific procedures and operations, performance assessment. Public and private investors concerned about the investment time, risk level, and revenue range. Startup and innovation local ecosystem, defining new business models, pricing, service, and products' minimum performance level. Public authorities on environment protection, concerned by the relationship between central references and local actors in media and communication management. Public authorities for social affairs, responsible for the link between the consultation and listening and the operational sections. Education institutions, linking the consultation and listening and the operational sections. Citizens and civil society as the recipient of the UAM service and infrastructure's impact on urban zoning and functions. For aviation and ATM, the key actors and stakeholders are airport operators responsible for aerodrome premises and influence on regulators. Vertiport, responsible for vertiport premises and influence on regulators. General and commercial aviation operators with a liability on the operations and responsible for complying with operational rules and requirements. U-Space, UTM service provider, responsible for UAS operators and ATC providers. UAS, UAM operator, responsible for operations, customers' operation, and compliance with operational rules and requirements. UAS pilot. The pilot in command is responsible towards the passengers on board and the general public. UAS manufacturers responsible for the UAS/UAM operator product and to the public. Air traffic controller, responsible for providing safe, efficient and expeditious air traffic compliant with ATC regulations. Air navigation service provider, responsible for creating the framework and strategic and long-term decisions for air navigation equipment and services. National aviation authorities, responsible for providing a safe operational environment for businesses and citizens. National, regional, local government, with the political responsibility for the safety, well-being and opportunity of urban areas' citizens. Military authorities and military operators who provide the security of the citizens. In the field of energy infrastructure, the stakeholders are smart grid managers responsible for maintaining and improving grid capabilities and performance. Renewable source energy producers responsible for maintaining and expanding power grids to new distribution and generation points. Fossil energy producers responsible for the strategic fuel supply capabilities. Energy dealers, which respond to the regulation and service compliance. Investors, support initiatives, companies, and startups that work in the energy sector. Startups that support the development of new and sustainable means of energy production, distribution, and management. And citizens and the free market. Finally, the stakeholders identified for financing and procuring are national, regional, local government with the political responsibility for the safety and well-being. Service and infrastructure providers compliant with service-specific regulations. Public and private investors, which provides financial regulation compliance, revenue generation, and positive impact on sustainable growth. Citizens, that have access to and have a fair attitude towards the service. Planners should prepare to leverage the transformative potential of UAM to address mobility needs and resolve the past failures of transportation systems. Therefore, for good integration of UAVs in urban planning, some technical and non-technical issues for an urban planner are safety, security, communication, reliability, cost-effectiveness, heterogeneity, development and testing, privacy, ethics, cost, business adoption, and licensing and legislation. Suggested policies in urban planning and urban transport support the organization of human settlement as a spatial, social, and economic characteristic of a desired state, providing long-term orientation and prioritization developed around the goal of integrating UAM in cities of the future. Therefore, some recommendations to develop UAM in urban planning are: for citizens, marketing campaigns that motivate them to participate in the mobility agenda, raise awareness of UAM's new services and business opportunities, continuous consultation, technical and scientific dissemination activities, and support awareness and training path for UAM job and career opportunities. For local public actors networks, municipalities' participation in the European Platform for Intelligent Cities and the European Network of Living Labs. Educate the municipalities' technicians and professionals for UAM managerial roles as a responsible for all public and private stakeholders. For transport operators, analyze the transport means, travel and logistics, and planned infrastructure and services. Identify the bottlenecks of transport services. Analyze the relations and responsibilities interfaces between transport actors to identify weak points of functionality, costs and externalities. And conduct market research to determine the best software to host new integrated transport UAM services. For interdepartmental public actors, build awareness of future needs. Integrate thematic development projects in the UAM framework. Establish an online SUMP platform. Detail UAM services short, medium and long-term SUMP actions. Ensure coherence of intermediate steps, achievements of SUMP with UAM integration over a longer term. Consider diverse UAM applications for commercial intercity, cargo delivery, and public services, and local acquisition of the U-Space regulatory framework for unmanned air traffic management. For private actors, involvement of various public and private sector stakeholders in the transport planning phase. Make the measurable and tangible results of Unmanned Aerial System, UAS, trials transparently. Set up online platforms to gather inputs and interact with public and private stakeholders. Initiate a reward campaign to promote integrated sustainable means of transport for public and private actors. Holistic integration of UAM into urban planning. Include in the travel planning applications the use of UAM transport options. And for social partners, consultation process to develop a socially and politically well accepted and supported plan. Improve efficiency and support the seamless pursuit of objectives by institutional cooperation. And activation of forums to exchange information among civil society actors. The volume of flights, size of the vertiports, ground handling, power supply, parking, emergency landing locations, and operations from and to the vertiport within the city, including airspace structuring, must be technically regulated in the aviation and ATM field. Here, there are some policy recommendations. For airport operators, design a plan to integrate UAM at the airport. Define requirements of approach and departure routes for eVTOLs within the airport. Create guidelines for allowing eVTOL operations volume based on the maximum dB level permitted at the airport zone. For air navigation service providers, define the role and responsibilities of ATCs. Define the responsibilities of USSPs for the management of UAM operations. Define requirements for the planning of UAM operations. Identify possible non-nominal operations and define managerial procedures. Provide training to ATCs about UAM operations in airports environments. For city authorities, define the optimal location of vertiports within the city. Define the vertiport optimal size for the city with architects, urban planners, and UAM experts. Define departure and approach routes for the vertiports with ATM and U-Space experts. Define requirements on the maximum number of operations allowed. Finally, define possible emergency landing locations with urban planners and UAM experts. And for regulatory authorities, define requirements for the certification of all the new actors in UAM and support airport operators, ANSPs, and UAM actors in defining guidelines for each actor's roles and responsibilities. The great scope of energy recommendations formulated for UAM is high, resulting from global and regional trends. Here are some policy recommendations for energy infrastructure. For regional regulatory authorities, follow European Commission priorities regarding energy mix. Invest in developing modern and climate-neutral energy production and distribution methods. Promote and incentivize circular economy and sustainable development approaches for smart grid managers and energy dealers. Increase the grid capacity to serve more consumers. Enable resource optimization by focusing on smart solutions and creating opportunities for high-level inter-domain integration and optimization. Build microphotovoltaic farms to support the development of UAM charging stations. For renewable source energy producers and providers. Contribute to increasing affordability and applicability of energy from renewable sources. Contribute to UAM application efficiency and UAM economic attractiveness. For public investors and decision makers. Support technological development to mitigate energy management adverse phenomena, hydrogen propulsion, optimization of artificial intelligence, perovskite solar cells, and new methods for renewable energy production, and raise awareness about energy demand and space-time distribution patterns. For startups and private investors, develop technologies to mitigate adverse phenomena of energy management processes, and definition and development of UAM-based tools for better energy management. And for civil organizations, follow circular economy principles, promote a sustainable transport lifestyle, and include UAM in multimodal, active and shared mobility service. Financing and procuring drive UAM's effective deployment strategy by covering the costs of city and inhabitant tolerance to some inconveniences resulting from operations, funding development and research on the interconnected intermodal infrastructure of freight and passenger services, and investing innovation in a risky business environment. In addition, sustainable transport policy for cargo and passengers must leverage collaboration among national strategic sectors to avoid funding overlapping and competition. Some policy recommendations in financing and procuring are: for national, regional authorities, define the inclusive mobility scope of urban air mobility funding. Define safety and security standard scope of urban air mobility funding. Design integrated business models accounting for the social equality layer and users and non-users of UAM services protection. For local city authorities, integrate UAM systems with the city's policy goals. Assure customer orientation, usability, and social service provision. Support the development of infrastructures compatible with land use zoning. Deal with the threat of a private monopoly in the long term. Integrate local mobility providers to articulate priorities with the industry and comply with operational air mobility restrictions. For service and infrastructure providers, work with urban planners, UAM users, other smart city UAM services, and private and public investors to draw business models that assure compliance with the public service. Work with private and public investors to draw business models and fares that ensure social cohesion, accessibility, and equity. And for investors, work with transport operators, UAM operators, smart city service providers, transport planners, city strategic planners, and startups to ensure financial regulation compliance, better assess the risk level and revenue range, and have a positive impact on sustainable growth. Many possible UAM events can disturb natural ecosystems. For example, the drone's features such as size, shape, propulsion, type and nature of the flights, altitude, speed, color, flight angle, vibration, and noise could disrupt the animal's habitat and human well-being. The policy recommendations and actions for environment are described in the table. The main concern is related to noise. The general recommendation is to reduce the noise level impacts in urbanized environments through a proper certification of drone operations. The certification could be built based on the noise emission model for helicopter operations. Finally, regulation and policy must define the manufacturer's vehicle noise certification processes and engage the community for UAM operation acceptance.